acknowledging they are forward-leaning about it.
The options are essentially stop providing services or do it for free.
The economy is a system that was designed. We can redesign it to get the outcomes we want to see.
Actually, this wasn't inevitable. You had a choice about what you gave your money to, and you chose to keep your promise to landlord.
It is quite devastating to see this current government absolutely trash what has been a really good track record with disability.
The complete lack of investment into Te Ao Māori.
What is the top priority for that $15 billion? The government says the top priority for that $15 billion is tax cuts.
But it's not fair that a religious group like Destiny Church stands outside a school. If it was any other protest group, parents would not accept that.
Hello there. Good evening. Blake, I'm going to let you take this one. Kick it off. Tell everybody what we got on tonight.
Tonight we have Ingrid Leary and Michael Wood joining us live, and we're going to share a bit about the news of the week and a bit about the campaign. But first we have to get to the sad news of the day. So earlier today we lost King Tuahai. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Paul can help with that. Tuahai. So he passed away peacefully in the Waikato Hospital over the last 24 hours, and we got a special tribute from King Charles and Queen Camilla.
So I just want to point out the fact that obviously it's a very tough time for people, especially in Tainui at the moment. I grew up around Tainui, so I know how much people are impacted by this. I also would really like to point out the fact that even King Charles can use the word Aotearoa in the correct pronunciation and spelling of Te Reo Māori in his statements, which is far, far better than we're seeing out of our current government. So for anybody who is feeling the loss, and I know many people in Tainui are feeling this very personally and deeply at the moment, sending our best wishes and thoughts to you. So I guess from there, the next best thing we can do is bring in our guest. We've got Ingrid waiting in the wait room, so we should jump straight in for that, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Don't forget, if you've got any questions for any of our guests tonight as well, pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that they get asked if we've got the time for it. Well, I should probably take the picture off. Great way to start. Brilliant way to start. Ingrid Leary, MP for Taieri, down in the south. How cold is it down there at the moment?
Tēnā korua, you won't believe this. We had the most beautiful spring day today after terrible wind and rain last night in Wellington, where I thought I wouldn't come home. So don't tell everybody, because the weather in Dunedin is the best kept secret in New Zealand currently.
I've heard that a couple of times, but I won't dig into that too much. We don't want anybody rushing all the way down there and causing havoc. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's really appreciated. First question for you that I've got lined up here. You have a couple of really big sort of spokesperson roles at the moment within the Labour Party. You've got mental health and you've got seniors. Both of those are issues that the government has made a lot of noise about, but haven't really ponied up particularly well or done really particular things that might follow advice, for example, the way they funded Mike King, or telling people that they're helping seniors but giving them like $2.50 a week extra in pensions. I'm kind of wondering what the feedback is that you've been getting from people within those groups and those communities, or helping those communities, around what you're seeing come out of Parliament so far.
Well, thank you for the question. They are big areas, and I specifically asked for both of them for a couple of reasons. One is that mental health is a huge issue for our young people, and also I think is intimately and integrated and involved with all social determinants. And for seniors, I come from an electorate that has a higher than average number of seniors in our electorate, and actually a lot of disability as well due to the flatlands here. And so the impacts, particularly the social determinants such as poverty, housing, cost of living and so on, impact that group very specifically. So they're two huge responsibilities and privileges to be able to serve, and I feel really passionately about them. I would say yes. I think Matt Ducey has gone into his role as the new mental health minister with good intentions. The problem that he has is that he doesn't have control of the budget. It sits with the Minister of Health, Shane Reti. And they've been tied by their own silly coalition agreements to fund Gumboot Friday and to do the Mental Health Innovation Fund. The issue with Gumboot Friday is just the procurement process was a debacle. It wasn't done transparently and has left issues over picking favourites, but also there are still questions around safety. So I think we'll see more stories come out about that and more concerns. What it also means is that the money that's gone to Gumboot Friday couldn't be made available to go to other community groups who are working at the coalface and who have got really good best practice and who are now at risk of closing. In fact, some of them, like Here For You in Gisborne, have already closed. With the Mental Health Innovation Fund, that was supposed to be the lifeline, and a lot of community groups didn't want to speak out to the media because they thought that was their chance. And certainly the minister held it out as their chance to be able to get some funding for important mental health innovation programs. And then they found out that you need $250,000 sloshing around in your bank account to be able to co-fund a program, plus a social return on investment report, which costs around $20,000 or $30,000, depending on the size of the organisation. And we know that community groups just don't have that money available.
Do you think that because of your role in seniors, that with the funding cuts to younger disability people, that will start to roll into the seniors as well, Ingrid?
You raise a really good question, and I've just had my colleague, the Honourable Priyanka Radhakrishnan, in the Tairi electorate meeting, first with the disabled community groups and then with the service providers, and it's been heartbreaking. People are so fearful. They've been through such a hard time over the last few months with the changes that have come in. The change this week around residential care is particularly concerning. There were a number of people there who said that moves have been afoot within their family situation to go through the process of a family member being able to go into a residence to live their best life as a choice, and now that has been taken away from them. So although the targeting currently for the cuts seems to be around young people with oranga tamariki and in the disability sector, it is going to, the next wave, I have no doubt, will be probably targeted at seniors. And seniors are already facing huge issues, particularly around housing. We always think that seniors are concerned about health, but actually one of the biggest social determinants to be able to improve the well-being and the opportunities for seniors for a healthy and good life is to have good housing available, and that just isn't there for many of them, and it's going to get worse with the ageing community. Add to that longevity of life and an increase in disabilities, and very few houses or even thought going into how we make housing enabling for our disabled seniors, and we've got pretty much a crisis on our hands.
As someone with a disability that is in the younger generation, I worry for myself, but I also worry about for the older people. So I appreciate your statement.
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah,
you also put on. No, go ahead. The joy of technology. It's like a seance. I'm kind of curious with your role in the Health Select Committee. How often do you sit there and go, look, we've had a 22% reduction in housing permits that Stats NZ put out today. This is going to impact long-term people's health in these ways. Or, we're not focusing on preventative measures. We're not focusing on early intervention methods. That's going to then put stress on people in terms of their mental health, in terms of their physical health down the line in the hospitals. When you're sitting across the table from the people in Parliament around the Select Committee process, is that something that comes into consideration?
Sorry, Paul, I lost the end of your question.
I'm wondering if when you're sitting in that Select Committee process on the Health Select Committee, because it's obviously an area that so many things feed into the outcomes.
Paul, I lost the end of your question. I think you were talking about some of the...
Oh dear.
Yeah. Just wondering about the select committee process and how the feeding in process of other information, like housing numbers dropping, or the level of mental health help that's needed, or preventative measures.
So for people who are watching,
health
since I'm the only voice going at the moment, I think just stand by because the technology is great. It's just playing tricks on us at the moment. So we'll go back to Paul's question and then I'll try and answer
Damn
it.
your
Are
technology.
you back with us, Paul?
Damn technology. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, when you're working in that select committee for the health sector, how often conversations pop up around those sort of extra activities that feed into health outcomes, like housing, for example, and housing availability, or primary healthcare providers, mental health care. Is that something that seems to be taken on board by the current government? I think my technology is failing me, but the audience is hearing both of us.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what the question involved. I think you were talking about the social determinants and the things that go into quality of life for actually mental well-being for all communities, but also specifically for our seniors. So absolutely agree. And I'm not sure what the question was, but I can tell you that my approach certainly for around mental health is, there's three areas of concern really. One is doing no harm, so harm prevention. One is around the more medical response, but can include other responses. And then the third one is about how do we promote mental well-being. And that would be the kite, for example, that I would say valuing te reo Māori and culturally appropriate responses, but also just cultural connection has a huge role to play in mental well-being. And yet our young people and our Māori communities at the moment are being told that their language is either irrelevant or should be put after the English language. So that what kind of message from a wellbeing perspective does that send to people? So that would be in that third area. With the medical intervention, that's where a lot of the narrative is focused currently. And I think that's because there's always been a shortage in health. It's a very difficult sector, particularly as we age and we are able to respond and keep people around for longer. But now we are facing these frontline cuts, and make no mistake, they are frontline cuts, regardless of what anyone says. I've seen that with mental health nurses in Southland who have reached out to me to say that jobs aren't being re-advertised. There's some question marks that I'm looking into around psychiatric placements where I'm not sure if there's a psychiatry freeze, but I'm doing some work on that. And the good thing is that we've got a lot of people working in the public health sector now who are speaking out and giving us the information we need, because officials have been told not to, but they just cannot sit there in good conscience and watch the impacts that this is having on our communities. So I'm not sure if I've answered the question, but very much that's my approach to mental health, and certainly for seniors as well. I tend to look across things rather than down into silos, and we need to have a much more joined up system. I think that the whānau ora navigation system that we have for whānau ora has worked incredibly well. And I would like to see more of that navigation approach with different communities, certainly for seniors, so that instead of having to find their way around this morass of government agencies and not know where to turn for help, that there is someone guiding them who they can form a relationship with and who can quickly help them navigate so that they can get whatever services they need to help them live their best lives at home for as long as possible. And that's better for taxpayers too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take the next question, Blake, just in case my audio is playing up again.
Can you hear me, Ingrid?
Yes, I can, Blake.
Yeah. So, going back to what, so as I said earlier, I appreciate your statement on disability as a young person, because it's really tough for us at the moment. As you know, I've been advocating really, really hard to get my petitions out and to drive it here in the Wellington region. So, are you looking to do something similar in your area? Have your local disability advocates for your constituency do the same sort of thing?
Great question, thank you. I feel very blessed that we have a really strong disability community in Tairi. I think partly that is because people choose to live, particularly in South Dunedin, where it is flat. So from an accessibility perspective, it's a lifestyle choice to want to live here. It's easier for mobility vehicles. There's a culture of acceptance and normalisation because there is, highly visible disability. Of course, there are people without visible disabilities as well, but they are very strongly organised and motivated. I'm also the buddy MP for Invercargill, and I've been extremely impressed with this very small group down there that are doing some excellent work to advocate, to lobby Penny Simmons when she was essentially in charge of this, when she was making those really cruel decisions back in March, and who have done some work to capture stories on video, which will go out on social media as little vignettes to amplify the voice of disabled people. I feel that, we are taking giant strides backwards after a lot of hard work to make the changes that we've been able to make around enabling good lives. And there was a huge amount more work to do. But our democratic system and our parliamentary system, I feel very strongly we need to see more people who identify as disabled as members of parliament. And I think the parties have a role to play in that. We've done it for women. Our MMP system has done it for different interest groups. So we have those tools available to us, whether it's through quotas or through the MMP system. And we have had some people have identified as having learning disabilities. The more we can have those strong voices right there in the chamber advocating and really close to influencing the making of laws, I think the more quickly we will make progress. And so I'm proud that in the Labour Party we have the Kirk sector. I think we can do more, all the parties can do more to really try and get some equity into our political system to get those voices into Parliament.
We've had a question pop up from one of the people in the chat room. Just wondering if you're able to explain what the buddy electorate system is.
Sure. So I think both the major parties, Labour and National, do it. In Labour, we call it the buddy system. And it's where a sitting MP or list MP looks after an area that is neighbouring their electorate or where they have an area of interest. So prior to last year, the really fantastic Dr. Liz Craig was serving as the list MP based in Invercargill. She has moved on to other things. And so now I get in my van fairly frequently. I'm possibly going down there again on Sunday to work with the communities there and understand it so they feel that they have a Labour representative there. Of course, there will be a sitting MP from another area, such as Penny Simmons from National, but I'm the alternative there. And I'm keen to serve that community, and it's been an absolute delight getting to know them.
Fantastic. Right. I have one more question for you before we let you escape for the night and enjoy the cool evening down there. And it's on a completely different topic. As somebody who got into a little bit of news recently around comments that you made in the Select Committee, particularly towards Tanya Unkovic, who is a speaker for Stand Up for Women, which is a known anti-trans group. She introduced the anti-trans bathroom bill. You were sort of pulled up a little bit about the comments that you made. I've had a few people ask me, how come you get pulled up for something like that in the Select Committee process? Because there's an idea that as an MP, you've got certain privileges of things that you're allowed to say. I wonder if you're able to sort of explain the process of that for people.
Sure. I don't want to speak specifically on this case because I think that would be disrespectful to the process that we've had and to the apology that I offered to Tanya and to the House and the process that was afforded by our Speaker. What I can say is there is a standing order that says that MPs, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's something like can't cast aspersions on other members of Parliament or whatever. And so I was pulled up on that. I think it is a good practice to critique the behaviour of members rather than to label them. Although, we've seen lots of labels bandied around the House fairly recently. It's been quite a tense time due to lots of the politics and changes that are going through. So I hope that provides some context. As I say, I wouldn't want to comment specifically because there is a process, and I have apologised unreservedly.
Mm-hmm.
If members of the public have issues with, say, me as an MP or any other MP and the behaviours that we that we show, or if they feel that we're in contradiction of certain values, then certainly it's up to them to let us know that, or to write letters to the paper or whatever. But there are certain standards that have to be upheld within the parliamentary system for the MPs.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for the time tonight. It's been really appreciated.
Thank you, Ingrid. Yeah, thanks, Ingrid.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and carry on the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, we'll catch you later. That was absolutely fantastic. And we're going to jump straight into the next one because we already have Michael waiting in the waiting room. So we'll just do the big press the button thing, make the screen show up with his name and pull him in. It'll be great fun. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Oh, kia ora. Good evening. I'm very well, thank you. I've had a good, interesting week at work, and I finished it by having a nice beer down at the local pub with some of our members and delegates from E2 Union who work at TVNZ. So I've had a nice evening, thank you.
How are they holding up at the moment? Because it's a pretty rough time there for them.
A very difficult time. They've had huge disruption. Obviously had a restructure process which has resulted, sadly, in some amazingly talented journalists and other media workers losing their jobs. But they're a robust group. They're strong union members. They support each other. They fought for their rights. And thankfully, many of the people who did lose their roles, they have found good jobs in the sector more broadly.
If you do, a bit of a random question, I guess, but if you do, with your role with the union, if you do return to government in 2026 or the party even, would you consider taking on a broadcasting role to try and fit in with what you've been doing with the union?
Oh gosh, that's probably a few steps down the road from where I'm at the moment.
I know.
Which is just focused on this role. But I have to say, arising out of this work I've been doing with our E2 Union members at TVNZ and in journalism more generally, I've become very interested in these issues. And there are huge questions for us around how we retain a quality news media that keeps our citizens in New Zealand informed and enables us to participate in our democracy. And unless we have good public policy on this issue, we face real threats to that sector. So whoever it is in the next Labour government that has that job, there's a lot of work to be done.
Speaking of the work that's being done, you're doing a little bit of work at the moment behind the scenes in terms of policy generation, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. I've heard it from a few people that you're working in a few different areas to help develop the policy that will be put forward towards the next election. How are you finding it working with something like a union for the media, and how that kind of juxtaposes with the way that you would have been in Parliament dealing with the media, and how that feeds into some of that policy direction that you're looking at?
Well, yes, I'm involved as a member of the Labour Party's Policy Council. And that's the body within our party, well, the name's on the tin, isn't it? That has the job of developing policy. And it brings together all the different parts of our party. So I'm one of 5 party members who get elected into that role. But there are spaces for representatives from different sectors of the Labour Party. And we also have members of the Labour Party caucus there. So you have everyone around the table to develop up that policy and develop unity around it. And look, pretty much everything about being in opposition is bad. You always prefer to be in government when you're in politics, because that's when you can do things that make a difference. one of the small advantages is that you do have a bit more freedom and ability to really look at your policy. But once you're in government, you're more in an implementation mode. In opposition, you can really look at, well, what's our purpose as a Labour Party in the 2020s? What are the international trends? What are the issues that we face now that maybe we weren't thinking about much 5 or 10 years ago? And you get to craft a compelling policy platform around that. So I'm really enjoying that work. And we have really talented people in the Labour Party who are all contributing their ideas. And it's one of the things about being a political party. You don't just get to go out, deliver leaflets and campaign. You get to come in and put forward your ideas to develop up better policy. And look, yeah, that's something that sort of meshes with my role and my union role. I'm practically working at the coalface to try and support working people through our union to have a fairer go. And, I've always had the very strong view that you need both. You need an active union movement that's there in workplaces, helping people to be treated fairly, to have a voice and to make change. And you need a voice for working people in the system of government, which is why the Labour Party was formed. So, yeah, the two work really nicely together, and I'm enjoying both of those pieces of work.
With all the cuts that we're seeing to public service sectors at the moment, like service sector roles, one of the things that I've noticed that keeps popping up in the documents that people link to me is that if you are a member of a union, you're not likely to be the first in line to get a redundancy, because the union obviously has a fair bit of power in that respect. Are you getting feedback from people within those sectors going, look, this is why the unions are such a powerful tool? This is something that workers are seeing a value in because of that?
Well, look, the core reason that working people to come together in unions is to have a voice, to have more say, to have more power when it comes to these things. If you had 15 individuals running around on a rugby field doing their own thing by themselves, they wouldn't be very effective. But when they come together in a team, they can achieve a lot. And it's the same when people join together in a union in their workplace. And a lot of things that people in unions can achieve when they work together. The living wage movement is a great example of that. Our union campaigns for pay equity, for many low-paid workers doing really important work. But also unions can be there to stand up and protect the rights of workers when they are under attack. We've seen this recently with some of the big swinging cuts from government to incredibly important work across health and education. And because the government was trying to rush forward at 1,000,000 miles an hour, they just missed out basic process in terms of talking to, involving, working with their workforces about how that change might happen. And actually, in health and education, some of the clauses in the collective agreements that unions had negotiated were the same that we were dealing with at TVNZ, where unions had got agreement with employers that before you make big change, you need to come and sit down with us, talk through the problems that you're facing, enable the people who are doing the jobs, who have the knowledge, to contribute their ideas and try and come up with the best solutions before you just say we're going to, fire 70 people or whatever it is. And some of these employers forgot to do that. And because we had strong unions, E2 Union at TVNZ, the PSA in health and education and others, with the resources to push back, we were able to force those employers to the table to properly talk with and engage their workers. So another great reason to join your union.
How far are you in with your, if you can comment at all, are you in with your helping TVNZ with their issues that they're having with unfair redundancy and so forth?
Well, we've had a really significant process there where TVNZ did breach the collective agreement with their workers, didn't have that process of engaging with them. And our incredibly brave, talented union members there stood up to that. We took the company to the Employment Relations Authority and we won. The company appealed that. We had it out in court and we won. And we forced the company to agree that process wasn't right. They're now going through another process for further change at TVNZ. And this time they're having to follow the correct process because we stood up for our rights. But look, in the area of media and journalism, there are lots of other issues. So just this week, I've been working with our journalist members around the issue of AI in journalism. We had the instance a few weeks ago where the New Zealand Herald printed an editorial without disclosing it that had been entirely generated by AI, which caused real concern for working journalists up and down the country. So we're the Union for Journalists, and so we've put together a statement around that issue, setting out some principles and calling for an industry summit around this issue to make sure that we protect the integrity of journalism in New Zealand. We know that these tools are here. They're not going to go away, but let's put some proper guidelines in place. So again, this is the thing about unions. People kind of think that maybe they're about turning up once a year and trying to fight for a pay increase. Well, we do that stuff, but actually unions are a way of working people coming together to deal with a whole lot of different issues in their work and in our communities.
We've had a question come through from the public a bit more about the policy planning side of things. They want to know whether or not Labour's looking at going back to their pre-Rogernomics roots. And I feel a soft neoliberalism is what's hindering them, and the Greens are taking their voters.
Well, the Labour Party, in my view, needs to be the party of working people. That is the principle upon which we were founded back in 1916. And Labour is at its best when we're speaking directly to that, and when we're challenging the vested interests in our economy and our society that rig the economy and that channel more and more resources to a few at the top. So we need to be the party of the many, not the few, which I think is perhaps a way of getting to what the person with this question is getting to. And that needs to be reflected right across our policy, across our economic policy, our tax policy, our social policy. And actually, when we do that, and when we do it well, the reality is that the majority of people in New Zealand, whether you're working in a factory, a call centre, whether you run a small hairdressing business, you're caring for someone, most people in this country, one way or another, are working people. And we need to be the party that unambiguously says, we're on your side and we're going to give you a fairer go.
Just briefly, what's it been like watching the current government from the outside?
Oh, well, look, there are days when I think, boy, I'd like to be back in there, really giving it to them over the latest rotten thing that they've been doing. But looking at it from outside of Parliament, I've been really proud of our team, our Labour team, who have, I think, shown great unity and are really beginning to highlight some of the ways in which this government is damaging our social fabric. I think of some of the work Aisha Verrill's done recently in terms of highlighting what's happening in the health sector and building up links there. But being outside of that environment does give you another perspective. And so, I mean, the thing I'm really seeing at the moment that I don't feel there's quite so much wide coverage of is just sitting here in Auckland, talking to workers and employers, just how bad the economy is at the moment. Just how many businesses are closing down, just how many people are losing work and losing hours. I mean, the economy is tanking at the same rate as it did during the global financial crisis. The rate of under 20s, not in employment, education and training, is now 20.7%. And that's a ticking time bomb, a social disaster, because this government's policies have made this recession deeper and longer than it needs to be. So, you really see that at ground level when you're working out there in the kind of work that I'm doing. And we've got to make sure that, across our people who are there in Wellington, across people working in unions and just people of good heart in our communities, we band together to push back against some of the worst policies, but also to build up a compelling narrative so that we can come back and win next time and make sure we have a government that does support working people.
Mm-hmm. I have another question that's coming from the viewers. A bit of a long one here from Tracy. She says, Kia ora, Michael. I'd be in favour of an opt-out program for union membership or compulsory. Unions that are a resource for employee advocacy and education, so all workers, including migrant workers and youth, can be offered protection from workplaces right at the start. What are your thoughts on this?
Really interesting series of points and questions there. If I can start around the question of compulsory unionism, I'll perhaps give a surprising answer to this one, because I've been asked this before, and I think often the expectation is that, oh, well, he's a union guy, he'll agree with that. And I've always said I don't actually support that. And one of the reasons for that is, of course, we've had compulsory unionism in the past in New Zealand, and for quite long periods of our history in the 20th century, actually. And one of the unfortunate outcomes of that is it sort of means that unions don't need to get out there, roll up their sleeves and do the work to educate and organise people. People just have to belong. And so it kind of means that unions kind of then just sort of become this almost servicing agency. And the risk of that for unions is that if that suddenly gets pulled out, they're stuffed. And that's actually what happened in 1991 when the national government came in, took away compulsory membership, brought in the Employment Contracts Act, and unions spent 10 years in a tailspin dealing with that. Whereas if unions have to consistently be organising to build membership, that actually keeps them more resilient, in my view. But we do in our system have many, many very real barriers for people being able to access the benefits of unions. And I think we should look at different ways of making sure that people do have easier access. So fair pay agreements were an example of that. It didn't force anyone to join a union, but it would have meant that many, many more people would have had the benefits of union negotiated fair pay agreements, for example. There is discussion we're having in our policy process about the option of opt-out membership. Some people have suggested you could have that generally. Some people have suggested maybe that's an option for particularly vulnerable groups of workers, like migrant workers, perhaps. So that's something that we can consider in the policy process.
Cool. Thank you. It's a very detailed answer. I've got one more question for you that's actually come through previously when we asked people for questions beforehand, and it's actually about how you've become a bit of an icon cycling around the city. Just wondering what your views are on the public transport options in the city at the moment.
Well, on public transport, look, I'm a public transport guy. I love taking the bus or the train where and when I can. And the best, most successful, civilised, great places to live around the world are built around excellent public transport. And I'm a person who thinks actually this is an area where those of us who love public transport need to talk it up, not talk it down. And the great thing in Auckland right now is that although it's not good enough and it needs a lot more work, public transport is now better and more accessible than it's probably been at any time in 50 years. The frequent transport network, which is buses about every 15, 20 minutes, there's a map that's going around at the moment, has grown massively over the last 10 years because Labour prioritised investment in public transport. The CRL is going to come on board in early 2026 and double the capacity of the rail network. The Eastern Busway is now operating and will be extended because of Labour's investment. The Northwestern Interim Busway is now operating and huge numbers of people are flocking to that. So we've got more public transport options than we've ever had, but we need, unfortunately, National is now pulling that to bits and cutting the funding, and we need to make sure that we're fighting to keep as much as possible and developing plans to connect it all up. And the underlying thing that we lack at the moment is the spine of a rapid transit system that's linking together your rail, your dedicated busways and light rail to have the real high capacity, frequent, big routes through the city that knit together so that you can take connected journeys around the city. We were getting there with the light rail program and CRL and those other things. And we're going to have to make sure that we continue to assert that. And that's what
in Sydney actually when they cancelled the light rail from the airport, and I was just sitting there going, Sydney Central, seeing light rail in action, just going, how fucking stupid is our government to do something like this? It's just yeah. We've
seen the Sydney George Street program. I was there a few weeks ago. A light rail make a huge difference, and now the Sydney Metro program. And look, when you provide these services, people flock to them. When the Clark Labor government built the North Shore Busway, National and others said it was a white elephant, and now 50% of people at peak use that service to get from the North Shore to the Harbour Bridge, and it would be unthinkable not to have it. When we deliver great, accessible, frequent public transport, people use it, and we need more of it if we want to make sure that we reduce congestion, reduce emissions, and make this an even better place to live.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. It's really appreciated. I've learned heaps tonight. It's brilliant. You'll have to tell me where you go out and get your beer, though, after you finish work.
I was at the Empire Tavern with the TVNZ folks tonight, and that was very nice.
Nice. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of the union stuff. I look forward to seeing how that all plays out.
Cheers. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Michael. It's been a great night for guests so far. We still have Adrian coming up. Before we get Adrian lined up, do you want to give people an update on your campaign?
Yeah, and sorry for the background noise. The brother's very happy tonight. He's at home with me. So I apologize for the background noise. But anyway, we will carry on. So for anyone that uses Twitter, I shared the petition on Twitter today. So anyone that would like to retweet that would be able to go find me on Twitter at VFG Podcast with an S, because I had to add an S because someone had already taken it without an S when I made the Twitter account. Also, we're well over 1,000 signatures now. For those of you that didn't see it, Nick appeared on Maori television yesterday, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, Rebecca appeared on a few outlets for us this week.
Yeah, she spoke to Stuff and a couple of other places as well. So it's good to see the media picking up on it.
So we will continue to address this issue. I'm currently working on a local meeting in the Wellington area for our Wellington viewers. So I'll try and keep you guys updated on that. It's a very slow process because there's so many moving parts when you're dealing with 3 different offices. Fun times. Just a quick update on the original petition too. That will be going to select committee on November the 11th. So the very first original petition for the first round of cuts will be going to select committee from November 11th this year. So that'll be pretty cool. Yeah.
Brilliant.
But on to our last piece for tonight.
Yeah. So our last piece is with Adrian Rurawhe, who is former Speaker of the House. His great-grandfather was T.W. Ratana, the person who founded the Ratana Church. His grandparents were both MPs. His grandmother, the first Wahine MP that we ever had in Parliament, taking over from his grandfather in what was possibly the loudest office in Parliament. I think he's had a bit of a downgrade since he was Speaker. There was wind, there was like trucks backing up and everything like that. We do touch on the issue that cropped up over the week of the Māori Affairs Select Committee refusing to allow the Waitangi Tribunal to go in and talk to them, which is something that can raise a lot of emotions for people, especially at the moment in light of what happened with King Te Heitia. I felt it was really important that we followed what the King's wishes were to have conversations and bring people together. So while there was some talk about whether or not we'd actually go ahead with putting this out there in this episode, I made the call that we would do that because I think it's important that people hear that conversation, but also well aware of the fact that it's not a negative conversation. I think it's a very positive one. So we'll jump into that one. We'll have that conversation now. Stick around because afterwards I will bring you an update with the news and a promise that I will finish tonight's episode on some positive news. I worked really hard to make sure that we found some. So let's check out the interview with Adrian and we'll catch you guys all soon. Okay. Hey everybody, we've got Adrian Rurawhe with us today, who is the former Speaker of the House, a man with a really impressive political lineage. I'm really curious actually, and we've had a few people ask us to ask you this. How hard is it to fit into the position that you're in now, knowing that you've got the legacy of your grandparents and your great-grandfather sort of looking down on you and what you do these days?
Well, first of all, greetings to everyone.
Yeah. The important thing, say hi first.
It's a serious, it is a serious legacy, and I'm very much aware of it. And I suppose it's like part of the story and part of the reason why I'm here, because of those memories and expectations from my community, the people that I live with, and Ratana Pa, who decided for me that I was going to be a member of Parliament. And I didn't have much say in the matter. But of course, I knew that was always a possibility. I'd been around it all my life. I grew up with people that actually weren't related to me, but people like Koro Wetere, who I called uncle because I thought he was. So that was always in my background, and it was quite just normal. I thought everyone's uncle was in Parliament, and grandmother, who I was 20 when she passed away, so I knew her really well, and spent a lot of time with her. Lucky to spend a lot of time with her. And remember very clearly some of the discussions of the time, that the kōrero around the dinner table was usually three topics: sport, mainly rugby and netball, politics and church. So those were the discussions that you. And if you had other interests, well, you were probably having conversations with other people outside of whānau.
How much of an influence on the way that you approach Parliament comes from that interaction with your grandmother? I mean, she was the first female Māori MP. That's an amazing legacy to follow in. How much of what you do today do you sort of sit there and go, well, this is something that she would have done, or she would have supported, or I can't believe I'm doing this because she would never have done something like this? Is there an element of that to how you approach day-to-day life in Parliament?
Yeah, and interestingly, she never ever once gave any sort of instruction, certainly around politics. It was just being part of and hearing those discussions. What she did do, and the time that I spent with her, she used to get me to read passages from the Bible for her, and she'd say, "Read this," and I'd read it. And then she'd always ask me what I thought it meant, what were my thoughts about it. And then I'd give them. And sometimes she'd say to me, read that again. And interestingly, she not once told me that I was right, and she not once told me I was wrong. She just, I think she was inquiring as to how I was thinking about it. And I often think back, I'm pretty sure she was giving me some life lessons through them. And they certainly have had an impact on the way that I behave, and my understanding around faith, and how you treat other people. So those were the kinds of lessons and the kinds of things that were important to her. Because I didn't know my grandfather, who she followed, because he passed away, and then she became a member of Parliament.
Well, as I say, when you took over as Speaker, I remember reading the interviews, and one of the things that you were really adamant about was being fair, because there's always criticism of the Speaker as being a bit biased because it comes from within one of the political parties. That sounds like you were being trained up for that kind of, I take everything on board and be fair with your responses and how you consider what's being put in front of you. It sounds like she had you trained up for that role ages ago.
Yeah.
Without my knowledge, so I think she did that with all of her grandchildren. That one thing I do know about her is she was, and actually my mother was the same as well. They treated us the way that we needed to be treated. So and all how they kept up with everyone, I don't know. But if that one needed this, then that's what they got. And if she clearly identified that, this is what was important, and this is what you need to know. So this is what the knowledge that I'm going to impart with you. And I think that kind of carries on today through my generation and the next generation. We do the same thing. So I think at a political level and at a personal level as well, those lessons are really important. But being fair in the House, and sometimes it's just I made rulings that were actually really technically outside of the rules of Parliament, but it seemed like the best. Sometimes reading the room is really important, and I think I was able to impart to the House that I was being fair, and despite the fact that it might not have strictly been in line with standing orders, the House accepted it. So, and you can only do that if the House has confidence in you.
Yeah. Impressions on how Jerry's doing?
I think he's doing a pretty good job myself. I mean, there's certainly things that I would do differently. And actually, in saying that, if I had the opportunity to be speaker again, there's some things that he does that I would start doing as well.
Okay.
I actually think he's a lot more chilled than I am, which is, I thought I was pretty laid back. But he has his own style. Every speaker has their own style of doing things. The important thing is that you apply the rules. I believe you should apply them fairly, and that you work from the same rules. Now, it's inevitable that you will get to implementing them differently. And the judgment between what's in order and out of order. There's so many different rules that one can use. For example, if a member asks a minister a question that is probably strictly out of order and you let them do it anyway, and you leave it up to the minister to handle it. And sometimes the minister, unprovoked, gives an out of order answer. And you've got to try and find the balance between the two of them. You don't want to be the referee that blows the whistle on every single thing. Otherwise, the speaker's going to end up inserting themselves into, the free flow of the conversation, which it should be. I mean, it's the people's house; it should be able to flow. But you still have to abide by the rules as well.
So, do you think your prediction in the House came from your ability to read the Bible to your grandmother?
I think, before I came to Parliament, I'd spent a lot of time on governance organisations, and I was on a school board of trustees at Māori Kura for 13 years and chair for 10 of them. I chaired my hapu for nearly 20 years. And those are not easy governance entities to preside over. And more than anything, I gained so much from being able to facilitate discussions and those sort of forums. Because let me say that, like in hapu huis, there's not really a great set of standing orders that people abide by. And if one of the aunties want to all of a sudden change the agenda, they're probably going to do that. And it's really, and MPs can be a bit like that. Sometimes, they think that the rules don't quite apply to them. And so, yeah, as I said before, you got to read the room and because I believe that implementing some things, and any member can do this, can cause disorder by saying something, and that in itself is out of order. So, try, and I've got to say that our current speaker, I think he does a pretty good job in bringing calmness back to the House when it gets unruly. So, and I would do it, I definitely do it differently. But if you get the same result, then I think that's okay.
And how impressed are you, that the younger generation like Mighty Clark are now coming into Parliament and having that youthful impact on the Parliament?
Oh, I think it's awesome, and I try as much as I can encourage new members. I think this place would be a better place, and I think if people understand the rules, so I'm very encouraging to the newer members across the house. Actually, if someone wants to come and ask me about parliamentary process, I'm happy to do that. There's plenty of help through, especially through the Office of the Clerk. It's something that when I was Speaker, I spoke often about, is that the Office of the Clerk is the expert on parliamentary procedures, and that's the place that members should go to find out what the rules are.
What are your feelings within your roles as whānau ora and Māori development? How do you feel about how this government is attacking those areas?
I think it's really unfortunate. I had the honour and privilege of working for Tariana Turia in the early 2000s when she was a minister in the Labour government. And actually, I stayed with her when she went to and formed the Māori Party. Actually, so I was around when this whānau ora kaupapa was being developed, and it's as a kaupapa, it's been around for a long, long time. But then it became a government policy, which is quite different because whānau ora belongs to all of us. And I think the government is losing a huge opportunity by the way that they're treating it, because I think it really hasn't developed to the point where it could do. And in the 6 years that we were in government, we took the funding quite to a much higher level, and we're setting it on a pathway to have greater impact, because the whole philosophy is about strengthening families and giving them the tools to be able to do that for themselves. And I think the way that the current government is using it is not going to achieve that. And I point to Puni Kōkiri's recent report around thriving families, and they gave 3 scenarios. One scenario was if governments did nothing, what would happen? If they progressed it to another level, when we would achieve a high level of whānau thriving. And then the third one is like a much greater whānau ora kaupapa. And the reality is that what the government is doing is a 4th scenario is actually taking it backwards. And I think that is really unfortunate.
You have a role at the moment as well on the Māori Affairs Committee, it's almost unique in terms of committees because it's got such a broad sort of area that it covers. I see that the chairperson of that committee, Dan Bidouar, has blocked the Waitangi Tribunal from presenting to the committee. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are around that and whether or not you think that's a justified step for him to take in that role, or what is it that he's trying to stop them from saying?
Yeah, well, Māori Affairs Committee, by tradition, is quite collegial, and I've been on the Māori Affairs Committee both when we've been in government and when we've been in opposition. And all through, usually, it is about what is the best interest for Māori. And so even when we've been in the government, we've agreed to do inquiries into or get briefings on particular subjects that have impact on Māori. Now, a report from the Waitangi Tribunal, I think, is pretty important, and that it be a reasonable thing for a Māori Affairs Select Committee to ask it to come and brief us on that report. over the years. There's been all sorts of briefings, briefings from the likes of Farm Act, briefings from, we basically can ask anyone to give us a briefing on any topic. They all impact on Māori. This is the first time that I've known that the committee has decided, well, it was 4 in favour and 4 against, and unless you have a majority, it means it doesn't pass. And so the 4 government MPs voted against having a briefing from the tribunal, and the 4 opposition members voted in favour of it. And there we have that situation. We will carry on. There are other reports as well. Recently, there was a report, a police report about racism within the police force, and I'm probably going to write to the committee and ask it for a briefing on that report. And at some stage, it's certainly my hope that the committee will agree. I don't know what the problem is, because it's just asking for more information, which is actually publicly available, but hearing it from the people who wrote it would be, I think, quite illuminating.
There's obviously a little bit of tension at the moment between the government and the tribunal, because the government doesn't seem to want to pay attention to what the tribunal has to say. From the position of being in opposition at the moment, how do you feel about that? Like when you have a judiciary like the tribunal, which is supposed to be separate from Parliament, because that's how the judiciary works, saying these are things that you could do better, or these are really problematic concerns that we've got, and the government just going, we won't even talk to you. Is there something, like as an opposition MP, do you feel frustrated by it? Do you sit there and go, well, this justifies how people feel about the Parliament, the government at the moment?
It flies in the face of the what I understood was there was to be a mutually respectful relationship between Parliament and the judiciary, and it's really important that that is maintained. And now we have ministers actually making I think they're unparliamentary myself, comments about the judiciary. Well, it's really not acceptable. Just because a judge or a tribunal makes a decision that the government doesn't like, and then making comments about it is just not right. It's part of our democratic process. The different parts of our democracy, and the judiciary plays a very important part. And the Parliament shouldn't be criticising them for doing their job. And I think, we should be quite concerned about, the state of our democracy when we have ministers of the Crown doing that.
Do you have any aspirations to run in 2026? And if so, what are your plans to ensure that the Labour Party returns to government?
Well, first of all, I will do everything that I can to make sure that that we're back in government. I think for my people, it's critically important for them that we have another Labour government, and I know the majority of them strongly believe that as well. I think at the last election, they made it very clear. They gave their party vote to Labour in the Māori seats, and they gave the candidate vote to Party Māori. So they were giving us a clear message. They wanted a Labour government, but they wanted a strong Party Māori voice in there as well. And we have to take all that on board. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that happens, and that means I have to stand again. Then I'll do it. I haven't actually, to be honest, made that decision yet. I think it's something that you have to think carefully about. It took me a long time to decide not to stand in Te Taiho at the last election. I left it for a very long time because I wanted to talk to the people, and it was the opinion was divided. In the end, I went with the tradition, if you like, that if you're the Speaker of the House and you don't stand in an electorate, and there's some pretty compelling reasons why you would do that. And so that's where I landed. I'm not in that position now, so I'm not ruling that out as an option either, but I'll make that decision probably in the next 12 months or so.
Well, I was just going to say, we've already kept Adrian far longer than we were expecting. He's been incredibly gracious, but we should probably wrap it up and let him get back to being the incredibly busy parliamentarian that he is. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. It has been incredibly insightful today. I hope it's not too windy and wet down there at the moment. I hear there's a bit of a storm meant to be coming in. So keep safe. Keep very safe.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that is Adrian Rurawhe. I've got to get the name pronounced right. I heard it 3 different times in the one day from within Parliament itself. And I asked him really specifically when we started the interview or before we started recording what's the right pronunciation. He goes, I've heard it all, so I just answered to pretty much anything. So that was handy.
He's probably been my favourite interview so far, like history, this and wise.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating individual to have a chat to. Right, absolutely. Right, before we jump into the news, got anything else that you want to add before we do the newsy news?
Next week we should have Megan Woods on a pre-record, so
yeah,
it should be fun, especially with the issues around energy at the moment. So we'll probably put a thing out because they're filming that Monday. We'll probably put a thing out over the weekend asking you guys what questions you want to have. So she's a energy, and I forget the other one. Associate finance, I think.
Something like that. Infrastructure. Yeah. I'm going to say infrastructure, building stuff.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised infrastructure week for 4 years, and we deliver. So great fun. Before I jump into the news, I just want to take a moment out to thank everybody who's done super chats and signed up to be members. There's been 7 new members sign up tonight, which is absolutely fantastic. This brilliant super chat from MB1968NZ, small koha, an acknowledgement for your work. Thank you, Paul. My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. That one that came through from Tawhiri as well with the question as well for Michael. I hope he answered the question to your satisfaction there, Tawhiri. So thanks everybody who's done a super chat or joined up with the membership. The members, you might have noticed if you're following the chat, they get to see things in advance. Like the interview with Adrian came out a little bit earlier, and the daily stuff comes out when I upload it, which could be 11 o'clock at night. It could be 11 o'clock in the morning the day beforehand, but you get to see it before it gets scheduled out for everybody else. So thank you very much, everyone, for the support. It's been really appreciated. We should jump into tonight's news. Let's see, find the right button, intro, all the rest of it. Now, before we start, do I need to mute you for this one, Blake, or are you going to be laughing through it the whole way through and giving me a laugh track?
Do you guys mind if I laugh through it?
I think it'll be fine. It'll be fine. That's right. This one, I promise, is nowhere near as funny because I felt funny was probably not the greatest way to go today. But that's all good. We will jump into it. I hate technology today. Right, and now, perfect timing. My son's decided to ring right as I'm doing this. Great fun. I'm giving up on technology today. It's not my thing. Not my thing at all. Right, last weekend, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, seen here trying to teach Christopher Luxon how to do the twist after banning dancing in a small Midwestern mining town, stopped by in Auckland on his way to the Pacific Island Leaders Forum, When asked about this government's renewing of oil and gas exploration, which takes on average 16 years to see results, he said, "The only thing I can tell you is that oil and gas that will be discovered from now, I am absolutely sure it will never be used." He went on to say it would be as short-sighted as cancelling major infrastructure projects like new ferries to connect the islands or light rail from Auckland Airport, or cancelling a dam in an energy crisis to pay for landlord tax cuts. Go to the next slide. Go to this slide. On Monday, over 900 homes were left without power in Petone after a helium balloon hit power lines. Energy Minister Simeon Brown is reportedly sad that he lost his balloon. Apparently, it was a gift from the Prime Minister for learning to be quiet when the grown-ups are talking in cabinet. Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, seen here eyeing up the buffet, took his opportunity at the Pacific Island Leaders Forum to double down on minimising the impact of humans on climate change, with the often used climate denier line of "the climate has been changing forever," at a forum where the focus is on the impact on the islands from man-made climate change, where the guest list includes the head of the UN, who was there specifically because of the impacts of climate change on the islands. This week, councils all over the country have been voting on the retention of Māori wards. So far, all but 2 councils that have decided have chosen to retain the wards, with only Kaipara and Upper Hutt having voted to remove them at the next election, while 19, I think, so far have retained them. This sends a clear message to the current government that councils understand the needs of their communities better than central government. Maybe the results would have been different if the referendum didn't only target wards based on race, while the coalition tried to downplay saying it's not racist, or if the Prime Minister hadn't talked down to local body politicians at the LGNZ conference. But neither of those were going to happen under the current administration. A last-minute addition to the controversial gang patch law was slipped into the bill after select committee hearings recently that will see gang insignia banned in people's homes. Paul Goldsmith, seen here showing the Prime Minister his new haircut to make him jealous, claims this bill strikes the right balance in keeping gang patches out of the public. Apparently, the public now includes people's houses, and it's not concerning in any way that the government feels it can dictate what people can wear in their own home. This week, Penny Simmons, seen here proving you don't have to be smart to be the Minister in charge of tertiary education, was called out by the Te Pukenga Chief Executive for conflating the amount of debt the organisation is actually in by 5 times the actual amount. If she needs help with numbers, I know some amazing polytechs that might be able to help if they weren't being throttled by the government to pay for tax cuts. And finally, I promised good news. It's the annual Bird of the Year competition beginning next week on September the 2nd. Last year's competition was hijacked by foreign influences when US comedian John Oliver, seen here stealing the election, started a global campaign to have the Putekiteki win the election. This year's competition sees the return of the controversial 2-time winner, the kakapo, the addition of the Adelaide penguin, and the exclusion of the past winner, the long-tailed bat. Personally, and I don't do this very often, I will be endorsing and voting for the kakaruia, or the black robin. I mean, look at the little dude. He clearly loves the All Blacks. He's a huge supporter of them. At one stage, there was just 5 of them left in the world, and the breeding program that actually raised its population from 5 to 250 created a new model that now is used to save birds all around the world. Understated, underdog, world leader, world changer. What better bird could represent Aotearoa on the world stage? And that's it. That's our news for the day.
Great news.
Finish on a positive note. You finish positive. And I see, controversial. See, people are Team Kaka. David, thanks for the super chat, $2 to go Team Theo. Theo. I'm interested to see how it goes, but don't forget, voting starts on the 2nd. You'd go to the Bird of the Year webpage, and you can actually vote for, I think it's up to 5 different birds. So
I'll be interested to see who John picks this year.
Apparently, he's not entering this year. They've actually been really specific in the media that they've put out going, no, we promise no foreign interference this time. As far as we're aware, So, I like this one. Kiwi Burb's going for 10 Kiwi Burb. I think that's perfect. I was going through the list today, actually, and I was really surprised to see that there's only one Kiwi on the actual list of nominated birds. So there's some interesting stuff there. I was also thinking about going for the takahe because he's a chunky boy and everybody loves chunky boys. But yeah, I think that's us done for the night.
Yeah, we'll see you next week to talk about energy.
Energy. Bring the energy. It'll be great fun. Megan Woods next week. If you've got any questions, I'll pop something in the community section on the Facebook page or community section on the YouTube page and in the Facebook page, or just respond to this video with questions. It'd be fantastic, and we'll post them to Megan, and we'll organise some other guests during the week, depending on what other crazy stuff happens. Until next time, I guess, live long and prosper. May the force be with you.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Catch you later, guys. We'll catch you next time.